get started. I'm introducing myself, which is exciting. I'm Dr. Julie Gunther. I'm from Boise, Idaho. I opened SparkMD, which is a pure direct primary care practice, in 2014. This is my third year leading this panel, and I love it, and I'm super excited to be here. So thank you to Doctors for Patient Care for this really great conference. Yesterday, my mind was about to explode with content, so if you're fairly new to this dialogue, I apologize. I can't imagine how your brain feels. The purpose of this panel today is to provide the opportunity to have grassroots, authentic, real dialogue about all of the challenges in direct primary care, the good, the bad, and to have an opportunity for all of you to ask questions of 6 great DPC doctors about their authentic journey and kind of hear the dark side and the good side, and hopefully be motivated to do this and empowered with some tools, some real practical tools. So I like this slide, particularly in light of what our country is going through right now, but I think this summarizes one of the main impetuses for a lot of us doing DPC, and one of the things that rewards us the most, which is we get to be the reason somebody believes that people are still good. And that is what's going to transform our profession, in my opinion, is when patient after patient after patient realizes that we're on the same team. And DPC provides the space and the time for us to do that. So before these wonderful panelists give us their input, I wanted to talk about yesterday. I've heard a lot of talks, and I was really inspired both yesterday and this morning, particularly by statements like, it's easy to standardize treatment protocols, but difficult to standardize patients. That we are drowning in a tyranny of metrics. Dr. Paul Thomas's Ikigai, and challenging us that we really can find a place and a time where we are our whole selves and we're fulfilled with what we do. Dr. McKnight's really great analogy about feudalism and overlords, which is a little tongue-in-cheek but actually really poignant. And she offered that we need not just time but the space to do what we do, and challenged us, I think most importantly, to be defenders of our profession. Dr. Josh Umber reminded us in his simple but powerful way, it can be done, and that harm includes financial harm. Dr. Chad Savage, with my favorite, insurance is the financial calamity. And then Dale Bellis from Liberty said, our profession is profoundly challenged by lethargy, malaise, and insulation. And then many more inspiring talks today. This morning, I had a quote in my head. So I'm known for being pretty frank, occasionally cursing, and I've tried very hard to be transparent with my own DPC experience. Often there's an over-under on how long it'll take me to curse. I'm going to try really hard not to. So you could have a bet on will she succeed. That would be like a 50-50, right? But one thing I've thought about a lot is as this movement grows and as more and more people find their truth in DPC, I would encourage you all to be mindful that the people that went before you or I had a very different road to hoe. So Josh has said to me, and I'm sure he got it from one of his business books or maybe just his own brilliance, but he said, the people on the front lines take all the arrows. So I want to encourage you to please have a little bit of humility, that the struggles of Jeff Gold, for example, having to get the state insurance commissioner to say what he does is acceptable to do in his state when no one else is doing it, under threat of pretty tremendous professional and personal catastrophe, is not only expensive but time-consuming. So one of the first DPC conferences I went to, just another person in the room saying, EMRs are just billing tools, not patient care tools, I started crying because I was the only one in my community saying, this is broken and this is bad. And so more and more of us are saying that, which creates an incredible community, but that community didn't wildly exist 5-6 years ago. And the DPC community is not the only community that's been saying that, right? We've got Pamela Weibel, who's been an incredible advocate for physician suicide, saying this is unsustainable, this is harming us. We have the ideal medical practice model. This is something that a lot of doctors have sort of slowly been bubbling up. But one thing I was thinking about this morning is that transparency, which we don't have a lot of in healthcare, and we certainly don't have among our colleagues, although it's coming back, but transparency in how we feel, where we are, what we've accomplished, what scares us. Transparency is something that cures a great number of maladies, but particularly it cures isolation. And when you're in your startup phase and you're one of the few in your community, you're the only one in your community doing this, it is scary. And all of us who've been there know that. The first, you think maybe 3 months? No. The first like 5 years, which is where I am, are scary. Because you get the top of one mountain that you never thought you'd get to the top of, and then from that view you realize, oh, there's another mountain. I almost cursed, but I didn't. I didn't. So it doesn't stop. Right? So within that continuous climb and plateau, you have to figure out how to find your own space. So it is my great privilege today to have these 6 wonderful physicians, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves briefly, to be available to you to answer the real questions. I chose to do something first, though. I asked them for about 10 data points, and I chose to mask it. Because there's been some scrutiny that certain physicians aren't profitable and then therefore they're not leaders. What is crazy about DPC is very few of us are making very much money, and the vast majority of us are very happy. So how crazy is it that some of the most educated people in the world electively are leaving a $300,000 paycheck or $150,000 paycheck to take no income, incredible personal risk, to build something so they can regain autonomy and begin to defend our profession. That is the crazy, crazy message of DPC. So, and someday we'll be able to talk about that, but no one wants to hear about doctors who don't have money. So let me see, I don't even know what to push. Green, the big green button maybe. So with the slides, can we advance? There we go. So just to summarize, this probably came up in one of Phil's lectures, but when I opened, I was practice number 124 or 142 that declared like, hey, I'm DPC. There's now 930 practices in 48 states. 28 states have legislation or some sort of protective letter, which is phenomenal. Phil is determined to go in the 2 states that don't have DPC, so I hope he does that. We have organizational support, which is part of our growing pains, but also incredibly empowering. We have Doctors for Patient Care. We have the American Academy of Family Physicians. We have the Direct Primary Care Coalition, the Direct Primary Care Alliance, which is new. We have Facebook pages, regional meetings. We're starting to work together, which is incredible. And we have an overriding culture of collaboration and mentorship, which is not something I had among our physician community before DPC. We have amazing tools. We have vendors that are philosophically aligned with us and trying to create a product that helps us grow our business. And that is awesome. The themes of direct primary care, which hopefully you've heard today. Direct primary care in general is physician-driven. It has transparency in what you do, what you offer, what your pricing is. And I think we heard Doug and Allison kind of joke about that today. Be very clear about what you do and who you are. And that's a great opportunity. Physician-patient collaboration model, right? Because we have space and time. Open access model, we try to get people in same day, next day, handle problems as they occur. But more importantly, we are the hackers of healthcare. So, yeah, last night at 3 a.m., I was sitting on the ground in a circle of doctors, and I can't remember who it was because my brain hurts. I was not drunk, but my brain hurts. But one of the doctors, who was it? I don't know. One of the docs that was talking goes, isn't this amazing? We're total geeks. It's 3 a.m. and we're sitting on the floor bragging about how we drove the cost of a lab down by $2. Like, there are all these cells of physicians all geeking out on like, oh, here's how you do this. No, if you buy this, it's cheaper. Luke Van Kirk and I were talking about dextrose injections. And I mean, amazing, transformative, out-of-the-box thinking. So this is the one part I chose to mask. This is our 6 panelists and me. So physician number 1, 2, 3, 4, it's not in order. Physicians number 3 and 4 have a very interesting business model, had a successful existing business model that was highly or moderately profitable on which they built the base of their DPC. So their numbers are a little different. And I've asked them if they're interested to disclose some of these things as we go. But these are some of the questions people usually ask, and so I wanted to kind of get through them quickly. Among this panel, the least amount of formal DPC time that someone's been open is 12 months, the longest is 52 months. The number of patients most panelists had at opening ranged from 0, 2 physicians started at 0, to starting at 220. The question marks are because actually we have, and you can see urgent care, we have a few physicians on this panel that owned urgent cares, or were able to like sort of semi-transition an existing panel, so how many they had at opening is really more nebulous. Funding, how did people fund their DPC? The first person is a partial owner of an urgent care. The second person took a personal, so the 3KP is how much of a personal loan someone took. So I had to cram all this in, right? So $3,000 in a personal loan. Someone took $50,000 in a personal loan from their 401k. Someone had an established urgent care, and so they had no startup funding. They just used money and profit from that. Someone has 2 other established businesses, which has supported their profitability. Another one had an urgent care that generated some revenue and had $12K of a personal loan. Another provider, physician, had 3 separate loans, one from family, one that she'd saved up, and one from a personal friend, acquaintance, for $33K. And then the last person funded with urgent care work the startup to a tune of a personal loan, so to speak, of $180,000. So then the break even, the number of patients at which someone broke even, one of the physicians answered the question wrong and included their own profit in that. So one of those numbers is lower. I think it's physician number 3. Like by break even, I meant before you take an income, but they're a smart business person and included taking an income. The revenue, so total revenue for October 18 among these practices is shown there, which is really interesting, right? I think. The profit. Super interesting point, profit and revenue. The highest revenue doesn't have the highest profit, right? Current patient number, practice number 2 added a partner, so the physician number 1 is at 924, doctor number 2 is at 172, and they will cap doctor number 2 at about 600 patients, or at least is their plan. So there's the goal patient number, and which EMR or clinical care tools are they using? RCON stands for Rubicon, RAC stands for Hello Raish, which is a virtual assistant company. And so that hopefully will get us through a ton of the questions, because these are some of the, okay. So if you've seen one DPC practice, you've seen one DPC practice. We talk in this community about pure DPC. I think it's time to move away from that. There's definitely sort of a startup recipe, and you'd be wise to follow it if you're stressed, pressed for time, and have not a lot of business acumen. But what you'll learn from these panelists, I hope, is that everyone's got something. And it doesn't matter if it's a personal loan, a loan from patients, selling your house, a spouse or partner who works, a side job in aesthetics, like you've got some way to make this work. And then this is about transparency. So these physicians are hardworking and courageous, and they're disclosing to you some of the things they're probably a little scared to disclose, like the areas where they decided they probably sucked. So I think that deserves a lot of respect, because it's not easy to say, I'm still here and I'm working hard, but man, I screwed up a lot. So with that, I would ask the panelists to just go through. We'll start down there since Sasha's choking on water. So say your first name, well, introduce yourself, and particularly where your practice is, and maybe one short pearl to sort of tickle people's ears so they know who to ask what questions of.
I'm Michael Champy. Been doing direct primary care for about 5 years now. Located in the Portland, Maine area. So again, the quote that comes to mind that probably fits me best is a quote from Sir Winston Churchill, saying, "You can always count on Americans to do the right thing after they've tried everything else first." I think I'm a case study in how to do all the wrong things or learn lessons until you finally get it right. And again, always room for improvement, but and we can certainly get into it more. And I'm happy to answer questions and explain what I mean, but doing it now, kind of feel like I'm on the other side where things are kind of stable, looking around, paying myself, and very happy with where I'm at now.
I'm Shane Purcell. I'm from Anderson, South Carolina, and in January it will be 3 years we've been in practice. I have a partner. We're 50-50 partners, and we have one employed physician and just hired a 4th employed physician. And so my biggest comment would be that you guys can do this if you want to do this, if you feel the urge to do this. If you can do medical school, if you can do residency, you can do DPC.
Hi, my name is Delicia Haynes. I'm a family physician in Daytona Beach, Florida. I started my own practice right out of residency with no business background almost 10 years ago and switched to direct primary care about 4 years ago. Really more of a mental health decision than just a business decision, but it's worked out both ways. It's been just me. I'm single in all areas of my life. But we will be adding a physician part-time here shortly.
Hi, I'm Rob Rossborough. I'm in Silverton, Oregon. I transitioned a 20-year fee-for-service practice into DPC in April of 2017. Best decision of my adult life. Would never change a thing, actually. And my pearl is that this is a whole room full of collaboration. So if you're contemplating starting a DPC, find a mentor, find somebody that you like and can pick their brain, because it was super helpful for me. I'm grateful for all of my mentors.
Hi. Hello.
Nope.
Just kidding. Okay. Hi, I'm Heather Bartlett. I'm from Columbus, Ohio. I started with 0 patients, and it was a mental health decision too, of trying, seeing the breakdown in many different facets of healthcare between working in urgent care, ER, pre-admission testing, employed outpatient, and finally had enough is a short version. I'd say 2 tips would be grit, learn it and become it, and always be planning. And I'm sure we'll touch on all that, what that means.
Gonna have to pass that. Hi, I'm Sasha No. My practice is just in Apollo Beach. It's Florida. It's just south of Tampa. I actually started my own practice straight out of residency. However, it was not a DPC practice. And I started the practice as a traditional practice that I had studied from mentors when I was in residency. And so it was a very successful practice, but I was in the hamster wheel and still am, because I'm transitioning a traditional practice. In 2016, I attended my first DPC conference in Dallas, I believe it was, Texas. And that is where, actually that was a point in my life that I went through a very difficult health scare, actually almost died. So I had to make some shifts in my, how I approached medicine. So I had heard about DPC, I never really looked into it, but after you have a second chance at life, you reevaluate a lot of things. And I decided at that point, I'm going to do medicine on my own terms. And so I came back from that conference just really fired up. My husband was there, and I just knew this is the way we need to go. So since then, we have been transitioning our traditional practice, and we're still transitioning. We're working on the last few commercial plans that we're trying to get rid of, terminate, and hopefully convert some of those patients over to DPC. In full disclosure, I actually also, since then, in that pursuit to really live life on my own terms, do medicine on my own terms, I also spend time as an expert in a field that was in my first career as a researcher, and so that allows me to have a few extra businesses as well. And I love the idea of having a diversified income, and I think for me, one of the pearls that I want to just throw out there right now is that we're a room of amazing supportive physicians, but you have to figure out what medicine needs to look like for you. And so, we may feel pressured by one thing or another. The concept is, if you want to do medicine on your own terms, do it. DPC is the way to do that. But it looks very different for many people. So don't be afraid to do DPC your way.
Awesome. So, yeah. So we have about 70 minutes. I'm going to ask this panel probably 2 more generalized questions, and then I'm probably going to open up to just questions from the floor for about an hour. Do you feel like you have about an hour's worth of questions? How many people have questions already? Like, just want to know money and numbers and, okay, not too many yet, being brave. So I'll ask questions first. So one criticism of DPC has been that we talk about the physicians in healthcare. I appreciated the point yesterday that was made, which is what I believe, which is that when you care very well for the caregiver, it naturally distills down to the people who need care. I liken our healthcare system to a super, super, super wildly dysfunctional, abusive marriage, and then someone's complaining like, what about the kids? And I'm like, wow, well, we gotta fix what's going on with the parents first. So, but to honor that, I changed my question a little bit. So if whoever wants to take this can, the question or the request is please share with us a DPC success story that has affirmed this model of care for you. This can be personal, about a patient win, and patient wins are more telling for the non-physician folks, so nudge you a little bit. But would anyone, a few of you have mentioned that this was very much a personal decision, and then I know Dr. Heather had a great patient story, but would somebody share? Good, Dr. Haynes is going for it.
Oh, sure. So I always wanted to be a community doctor when I went to medical school. And then when I started my own practice, I felt like I was in a box. I was in a prison that I created. It was very pretty because I was an interior designer before medical school. So it was a gorgeous prison, but it was a prison nonetheless. And I didn't have time to get outside and become the community doctor that I always wanted to be. So one day, as a direct primary care physician, I noticed the patient came in, new patient, African-American man with his blood pressure in the stroke range, but his haircut was on point. So I looked and I realized, okay, I know where he's not going, but I know where he is going every 2 weeks or less. He's getting his haircut. So I realized that that's the intersection I needed to make. So I went to the local stylist and barbers in our town, and I said, hey, can I teach you guys how to screen for high blood pressure in your shop? And I bought a whole bunch of blood pressure cuffs, made a rack card of this is what normal is, and it also had some marketing material too. Just started doing that around town. And interestingly enough, in my area, I'm the first direct primary care practice in our county. The paper has never done a story on me as a direct primary care doctor. However, they've done story after story about the things that we've done in the community because I am a direct primary care doctor, the things that I've been able to do. So I think, as far as just being the doctor that you wanted to be and being able to see a problem that was always there and having the time to actually do something about it was just a huge difference.
Awesome.
So it was earlier this year that I had a patient who texted me and said, I've got a friend that I'm sending your way. He's really sick. I hope you can see him soon. So a couple of days went by, I didn't hear anything, and all of a sudden this person enrolls and I see him. And he's not really giving me any hints what's going on. And finally he's like, I've got bright red rectal bleeding for 3 months nonstop. And I was like, oh, no insurance. He works as like an auctioneer kind of scenario. And basically he was like, I wasn't really gonna do anything about it because I didn't have any insurance. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, let's get some labs, and also you're immediately gonna go get a cash colonoscopy. And he didn't fight at all. And he did, and within like 10 centimeters, they found a mass. So within a week of coming in, I'd already got the referral to Ohio State University. Within a month, he had it whacked out, and it's done. And when people do that story of, the cherry picking, yes, we talk about that, but like, how do you actually help people that don't have any access to care? They're not possible to help people that don't have some type of insurance or whatever. You're leaving them stranded. And he was like 100% validation of, this guy wasn't gonna do anything. And if you're gonna talk about societal strains and anything else, so when he was gonna roll up into the ER, when he was like tachypnic and going to the ICU and unable to go to the operating room, like that's a societal strain. And so when people talk about economic stuff, it's interesting when you can flip that story of, we did quick intervention. And anyways, that was my confirmation.
Anyone else want to share a win?
I'll take one.
Yeah, good.
So I have, and this is sort of a common one, I guess, that a lot of us see, but it's good to hear the common stories too. Had a 50-year-old guy, not seeing a doctor in quite some time. When he was able to go, he was getting intermittent blood pressure medication. Had diabetes, blood pressure medication. In our community, he could get his diabetes medicine for free at Publix pharmacy. And his blood pressure was not very well controlled because he was going to a local pharmacy, a chain pharmacy that I won't name, and paying $225 for losartan, which is a generic medication. He was able to come to our clinic, which we had losartan on our shelf. He walked out with a 3-month supply of losartan for $12, which covered his entire year. The savings covers his entire year of our membership. And he's been back many, many, many times now because he's able to afford that. His blood pressure now, obviously, is a lot better.
So this isn't just like a one-person thing, but it's a patient DPC story. When I transitioned my practice, I've been in town for 20 years, and I didn't want any of the older people to have to go find a new primary care doctor because I was deciding to quit my job and move somewhere else. So we decided to take all of our 85-year-olds and above and take them for free. And so because I'm the boss, I get to decide what to do, which is way cool. And but it's just really, really fun to be able to take care of older people and not have to worry about the financial part of it. We still use their Medicare. We help them navigate the system. And then the other thing that's really nice is that we have so much time in DPC, and we do home visits. We take Emma and I go out and we do a little home visit. We can draw blood. We can do vitals. And it's just amazing to see somebody in their own home environment. And, you know, we keep people at home, so, you know, they don't have to go to the assisted living facilities or, you know, the nursing homes, so.
Yeah.
So Julie said that we're going to talk about the dark side too, and I mean, I consider myself a little butterscotch, but I will do the dark side just because, right? No, what I can tell you is because I'm transitioning an existing practice, I still feel the pain that some of you hybrid docs may feel, which is getting the help for patients that they need. You know, my DPC patients, not only do I get to spend a ton of time with them, but if I need something for them, I can order that. You know, the patient who is still in the insurance model, we're still, you know, we still have to do the processes, whether it's a prior authorization or the patient really doesn't have the concept of even the benefits of even spending the money to get it, even though, you know, because we can get it still cash pay. We don't tell them, look, this is just for our DPC patients, but their mindset is shifted. And so it's very challenging to, you know, it's almost at times a little, you know, my care is the same across the board. That's one of the things that we do in our practice, okay? So just because it's a traditional, you know, it's a hybrid, it doesn't mean like my insurance patient gets any less time, but it's almost schizophrenic, like, okay, I know I'm going to have some hiccups with certain patients and getting the care that they need because they're still in that insurance model. My DPC patients, I make those decisions and we move forward. And so I love that, you know, even with the patients that I do have that are DPC patients, if they need the injection, we've avoided, you know, we've avoided going to orthopedics for consultations because I can get the MRI for, you know, a fraction of the cost. I mean, they have, you know, invested in the value of DPC, and it makes it such a free thing. Like, me knowing that the room that I'm going into as a DPC patient is like a breath of fresh air for me, to be quite frank. So I just wanted to share, you know, there's the good side, and then there's the side for those who are still running hybrids, that at least it's painful for me still,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and you'll talk to people who say hybrid is not the way to go because of this tension. but a number of hybrid meaning, and I think there's a couple different references to hybrid. So one version of hybrid is you allow people to pay cash when they're seen. So you still run a fee-for-service arm where people pay cash per visit. And some physicians have very wisely figured out, okay, the average patient comes in this many times a year. If I mark the labs up a little bit, the meds up a little bit, but they're not a member, they actually end up making about the same as the people who pay the monthly membership. So that's one business model that's all cash or credit card. The other hybrid version that you hear more commonly is people have one foot in the insurance-based fee-for-service world while they're trying to put their other foot in DPC. And that can be incredibly difficult for some of the things Dr. Sasha is pointing out. So I have one quick hack story that I'm very proud of. So what comes up in DPC sometimes is people say, well, what about the poor people? You charge, people really struggle with the concept of someone has to pay you, therefore you're only catering to people who can pay you. And I think Dr. Chad Savage's work points out the fallacy of that. I charge about $2.30 a day for grown-ups. I charge, I can't even fit, $10 a month for kids up to the age of 21. So like it's not even charging really. But but what DPC has let me do is start to think creatively. So the specific patient story, I have this delightful woman who established no health care in the prior 2 years, very, very, very overweight. Her BMI was about 52. Just delightful as all get out. Quit her job to be the primary caregiver for her patients who have dementia, or parents, excuse me, who have dementia, and they're also not well off at all. So really, really tough financial situation. So we come in and my first assumption is, oh boy, we're gonna, depression, diabetes, like all this stuff. And she's got a very rotund abdomen. So I'm doing an exam and she lifts up her shirt and she has like this double bubble alien baby, right? Like you see the umbilical hernia. I can see the peristalsis. I can see the veins of the small intestine. Like we were running on like vellum, which Dr. Haynes would know, but that's that super thin, you can see through it paper. I mean, not even that. And I was like, oh dear God, don't even touch it. Like don't move, don't touch, don't breathe. So uninsured, didn't even have a health sharing ministry. There's an amazing physician duo in Maryland and they run affordablehernia.com. And I had another patient go to them before. And they charge $1,900 flat rate for hernia repair. They court a $75 consult visit. They have an agreement with a local hotel and visiting angels service. They help coordinate people fly in, meet the surgeon the day of arrival for their pre-op, go to surgery the next day, recover in the hotel that day or the day after with the visiting angels and go home. So I told this patient, I said, how many Facebook friends do you have? And she said, 500. And I said, so we need to figure out how to get you about $2,500. Do you think everyone on Facebook would donate $5 for a health catastrophe? She said, I'm too ashamed, I don't want to ask my friends for money. So I reached out to my practice and I said, if everyone in my practice donated, and this is not a great win, but I did this wrong. I said, if everyone in my practice donated $5, we could support a patient flying to Maryland to have at least $5. So I had about 60 people give $5. I should have handled that differently. I should have said, if our practice can raise $3,000, but people thought I was asking for $5. But we raised enough to pay for her $75 pre-op consultation. The practice, me, put in a little bit more. And then she was able to raise $2,000 with her family. So she came to me after her pre-op and she said, I have to get my BMI under 50 or they won't do surgery. So I called or saw her every week for the 6 months prior to her flying to Maryland. When she left Boise, her BMI was 47, and I was like, do not touch anything in Washington, D.C. Do not drink, do not touch a bag of potato chips, no salt. She had her surgery, came home, I did the post-op care, and I've once called these surgeons and totally geeked out, and I think they think I'm a total freak show and been like, oh my God, you're amazing, have you heard of DPC? But this woman would have cost the system, this woman would have cost the structure system at least $14,000 to $20,000. And that would have been the best case scenario. The likely scenario is she would have died with a hernia rupture because she was not gonna go to the ER. Because while she has no money, she has the integrity to say, if I can't pay for it, I'm not going to use it. So when we drive price down, or when we have price transparency, we can help people. When surgery, and she also hadn't been on an airplane, so she was going to book like $1,000 flight, and so we sat down and went through Southwest Airlines, and I showed her the fare schedule. Anyway, we hacked that out, and then Priceline hoteled it. But and she got to go to Washington, D.C., which she'd never been there. So long story short, like when you have time and space and creative thinking, and you decide we can make this happen, you can save a patient's life for $3,000. And we all have those stories. But you have to start to decide, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to figure this out. And there's millions and millions of more stories. I guess from the audience, if you're an active DPC, how many people have a story like that they're proud of? Yeah. So these are the stories that make it super fun. Okay. Question for everybody. What is the one thing you wish you knew sooner in your entrepreneurial timeline?
I know, we only have an hour.
Okay. No, go ahead.
No, well, I mean, so many things. I wish I had done a lot more planning. There was a point, 2013 is when I decided to go third-party free, because I got a letter from the hospital. I was part of the Physicians Health Organization, which did collective bargaining with the insurance companies. And they told me, well, I got an email from them saying, you have to join our ACO, which I have tremendous moral problems with because it incentivizes physicians to cherry pick patients and provide less care. And what really got me was they said, can you please send us a PDF of your letterhead and your signature because we want to start communicating to your patients on your behalf. And I'm like, no, that will not happen. And they said, you have to do it. And I said, don't ever tell me I have to do anything. Yeah. So without much forethought, I told them, take me out of your arrangements. And they said, well, you can't do that because you'll go broke because you need us. And I said, no, you need the doctors. So I just, yeah. So without really doing any research, we resigned from all insurance companies, opted out of Medicare, and we decided we'd kind of figure it out from there. So that was not a smart thing to do. Like I said, we had a rough time for a while. We figured out, we did, again, it was a cash fee for service for several months before we decided to go to a DPC cash fee for service hybrid because we were really competing against ourselves. And I was the only one in the area that was doing it, so we were kind of making it up as we went along. Fortunately, another organization, the AAPS, has a lot of website, they put a lot of YouTube videos out which were really helpful about opting out, about DPC and so forth. So we really learned it as we went along, and like I said, we've made a lot of mistakes along the way, and trying to do everything yourself is not necessarily the smartest thing to do. Sometimes it's worth going into a little bit more debt and farming things out. I decided I was going to learn how to do websites, and I was going to learn how to do this and that, and maybe not the best use of my time, but again, it's one of those things you have to learn by doing. One of my mentors used to say that good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment.
Yeah.
Let me just add one thing to what Michael said. As far as insurance contracts, I'd be willing to bet most people in here have never read their insurance contract that they have with Blue Cross Blue Shield or whoever. Probably Phil's probably the only person in here that's read one of those. If you're currently planning to get out of those, you need to figure out where those contracts are at as soon as possible. Read those specifically to figure out what it takes for you to get out of those contracts, because it could take you 6 months to get out of those contracts. The language is very tricky, and most of them never end. So if you think you're out of it, you may not be out of it.
I just want to quickly add to it, just to make this story even more bizarre regarding the contracts. The PHO maintained the contracts, and we said we need the contracts because we know that we have to, contact the insurance companies if we want to, do our own. Again, because we weren't sure exactly what we were going to do, because I was doing it as a knee-jerk thing. And this will shock people. They said, you can't have the contracts. They said, if you want to, you can come to our office and look at the contracts. You cannot photocopy them. You cannot have copies of them at all. They are our property. You can't have them. And I'm thinking, why in the hell did I get in bed with these people in the first place?
How many of you need a vacation? Oh, I know it's more than that.
Yeah.
Like, for real, how many need a vacation? Okay, take it. So what I wish I had done that I didn't do was I felt like I had to rush in. I went to the Direct Primary Care Conference, and then the way the universe works, Blue Cross sent me a contract with a 40% cut to how much they were going to be paying for our services, effective on a certain date. So I made that the date I was transitioning. And I was struggling with depression. And what I really needed to do was take time to heal myself. And I think that coming from, the very first step, physician heal thyself, I needed to take a vacation, but because every bill that comes to me has my name on it, I felt the need that I needed to push and I needed to work and I needed to strive. And what I really needed was I needed to rest and I needed to fill up my cup and then serve from that. And especially when I was going through my transition, your marketing and your communication, what's in you comes out. So my victim language was coming out. And of course the patients are like, okay, but what's in it for me? And which is true. And I wasn't communicating that at first because I wasn't coming from, a place of being whole myself. So definitely take some time to take care of yourself, take care of your family, and then make your transition. I mean, you're not going to be perfect. Like, we all have stuff going on, but really take care of yourself first.
I guess I'll go ahead and share. I would like to echo what Delicia says. I think if someone, we get taught in residency that to be beat up is okay. And we enter this mentality of, we have to give until we can't give anymore. And we are all naturally loving, kind people. We love helping people. That's why we went into the field that we did, okay? But being free to say, look, this is who I am. I need to take a break, and that's okay. And I'm going to, say no. There's a song out there, my name is no, my sign is no, my number is no, you need to let it go. My kids are going to cringe when they see this video because I have threatened to actually sing that song on stage. But really being able to say no. I wish someone told me earlier on I had the freedom to say no, because I kept, and I'm not trying to play the victim. I'm a smart girl. I know what I was doing, but I wish the light went off sooner than it did so that I could take care of myself. But I think what DPC has done is given me the freedom and the vision to go after that and get out of this hamster wheel. Because I was in practice almost 5 years before my DPC aha, I have to strategically do that. And that's taken a lot of, to run a successful business, that's, it's taken a lot of help. I don't do it on my own. I have a great team. And that's another thing I would say, surround yourself with a great team, because you're never going to be able to do it alone. And the people in this room, like Lee and Josh and Chad and Julie, who have just really helped me so much along the way, we can't do it alone. So I wish I knew of the community sooner. So.
Yeah. Heather's going to talk. Dr. Heather's going to talk. Kenneth Richter, who's a role model in DPC, said he wrote an article actually a couple of years ago that leaving the healthcare system for some people is akin to Stockholm syndrome. And there is this, so when Dr. Haynes says, physician heal thyself, and she has a great slide when she talks that has a really beautiful teacup, and it says, we serve from our overflow. But when your cup's empty or half empty, where do you serve from? And I think when you're impaired, you don't know. When you're living in the swamp all the time, you don't know you're living in the swamp, right? And you only realize, or better analogy, is that really, really crappy relationship you had probably didn't look so crappy when you were in it, right? But now that you're out of it, you're like, that was a crappy relationship. And when they come back and want to go out with you again, you say no matter how fun they are. So I think until you get out, or until you are able to practice with authenticity and the space and time that you need to be a multifaceted person, I think the difficulty is you don't realize how impaired we become over time. And that's a challenge. So if you're tired and angry, or you think, who's that crazy lady up there telling me what to do? I would contend you need like a 3-week vacation, Priceline's cheap, and an antidepressant and a counselor, and you'll feel a lot better before you make decisions.
Yeah, just to piggyback real quick, we all kind of have a personality trait that, whether we realize it or not, has probably been exploited, which is perfectionism. And when you're employed, everybody says, "Oh, if you could just see two more patients a day," and you're like, "I can do it. I can do that." If you could just check just 2 more boxes, yeah, I got that for you, no problem. And it kind of cycles out of control. But you have to be careful, because when you actually get into your own company, your own business, that will work against you as well. And when I finally decided to pull the trigger, actually I didn't, my wife did, on the day that I was going to open my clinic, she said, "That's it, today's the day. You go in there and you flip that sign." And I was like, "But everything's not ready." She's like, "It doesn't matter. It won't be ready. Just do it." And then when people say kind of take the leap or make the jump, I'll say this very seriously. It's okay to drink the Kool-Aid of DPC, but you need to read the ingredients very carefully. Okay? And if you do that, then fantastic.
All right, so we have 43 minutes. Let's open for questions. Who was there first? Okay, yeah.
That's actually a great segue into my question. I've heard it at this conference and at prior conferences. Do the things that you love to do, and those daily tasks of whether it's running a business or something clinical, hire someone to do that, the things that grate on you. So what are some examples of the things that you have actually paid someone to do, whether it's someone in your staff or a consultant, and how has that been successful?
So Mike, you brought this topic up. Do you want to start? Or was it, yeah, you did.
Yeah, I did. And I'm still not very good at delegating things, because I'm still my own janitor, and we could afford someone to come clean, but I still do it myself. Kind of keeps me humble and reminds me that this is my practice. Some of the IT stuff we do hire out, because again, I'm not an IT person. I'm just trying to think. There's not a lot.
Who manages your website? Do you have a website manager?
No, I still do that.
You manage it. Do you have an
I still do that.
Do you have an accountant or a
we
economic
have.
partner?
My wife is our practice manager and bookkeeper, but we have accounting services. We have people. We found early on that trying to do practice management and just keeping everyone's credit cards on file and charging them every month. We did it for like the first dozen people, and then we realized, no, this is not even so high risk and just too much time. So we're using Hint and. Later switched over to Atlas. Both are fantastic companies, but you do have to do some of that. We try to send folks to counselors and teachers, although sometimes we counsel patients because they can't get in anywhere else. So I'm not really good at that yet.
Okay, who's a better answerer of that question? No, I'm teasing. Yeah, go ahead.
There must be a lot of perfectionism up there.
Yeah.
So call me a princess. But if it's something that I don't like to do, I usually find a way not to do it. I find a way to invest in someone else doing it, and then I work with them. I've got some bartering relationships. You have to have very good boundaries around those if you choose to do that. I've trained people in my office. So I have an MA who's been with me for almost 10 years, and sent her to QuickBooks training. Now I still look at everything, and my accounts payable, people who help with that don't help with the accounts receivable. It's very separate. it's important to know how to do the things. And in the beginning, before you're profitable, there's a lot of things that you're going to have to do. And then I keep a list of things that kind of piss me off for the week. And at the end of the week, I look at the list and I do something about it. Which usually it means that I need to find a way to bring someone on to do that so that I don't have to do it anymore. And as we've been more profitable, it's been easier to find someone, and it's a blessing for them. Like, there's people that love to do stuff that you don't like to do. And that's exactly what they're meant to be doing in the world, and I should be operating in my brilliance, and they're operating in theirs. So I mean, basically anything that I don't want to do long term, I find a way to kind of take myself out of it as much as possible.
Yeah, so are you answering, Rob?
Sure.
Yeah.
When we started up, I wanted our practice to be sort of the anti-clinic, but also have the real clinic feel. So we brought on staff long before I was really profitable, because that's sort of what my goal was, my model. So I took my office manager, Janet, who's here, with us, and we work together to build our practice. So she does all the things that I don't like to do. It's the collection of money. It's hard for me to ask people for money. I mean, I just like to practice medicine, and so she's very talented at that. She's gifted. And then we hired our MA as soon as we could, and it works great.
So if anyone's going to call you princess, they can call me queen. So we have an account. So I have a pretty high revenue, and I've been open for quite a long time. Relative to DPC. I've been really transparent. 2 years ago, I had breast cancer, and I made a really abrupt decision. I realized I'd built myself a job, but I realized my passion was to build a business, and those are different things. So from installing my own flooring, wallpaper, lighting, there every other weekend, building cabinets, moving things, because we didn't have enough money when we started up, but I had a vision, so as we had any extra money, I'd put on a barn door or move this cabinet. After my diagnosis, I have a lot of arthritis. Anyway, there's a lot I can't do and a significant amount I don't want to do. So I've chosen to scale the business and pretty much kept step the spend with the revenue. So I have 2 MAs, an esthetician, 4-day-a-week nurse practitioner, 3-day-a-week physician assistant who's straight out of school, so she's functioning basically as a scribe and like my girl Friday right now. We have an accountant and a lawyer, but we don't use them very often. Like, I use the lawyer for the LLC, and we trademark some stuff. We actually had a trademark infringement, like straight up hilarious company out of California calling themselves SparkMD, logo, everything, 2 years ago. Yeah, that was kind of interesting. And now I own a building, so we have a plumbing company that comes out sometimes. One of my MAs, her job is to clean the clinic. My other MA has been a medical assistant for 26 years. She used to run her grandparents' grocery store, her parents' grocery store, and she's been my right-hand woman for 9. She just took over all the ordering. She does she works from home on Fridays and just straight up hound dogs collections and billing. But this has all been a transition, I'm trying to transition to where I'm running a business and sort of a medical director role rather than boots on the ground all the 24/7. And that's a different path than some other people have chosen. But in doing that, I have people. Yeah, go ahead.
So I would like to reiterate that when I came out, medicine was my third career, is my third career. And I was older when I started medical school. I was in my early 30s, and I knew when I got out of residency training, I wanted to be my own boss.
Did she mention she does aesthetics on the side? Because you look like you're like 22. That's all I have to say. So
that's the butterscotch
She's secretly
genes.
80.
Butterscotch genes. But what I would say is that I knew right out of the gate, and that may be a little bit different for some docs, and maybe some docs might judge me for that, but being an older, graduate, I had 2 kids while I was in med school already. I've been married 26 years. I'm further along, was further along in my life, and I knew I wanted to build a business because I wanted to leave a legacy for my family. And I wanted to own my own time. Actually, owning my own time was the #1 reason I wanted to start my own business, because I don't like people telling me what to do. In addition to being a perfectionist and a control freak, which is another reason why we have to hire all these people. sometimes some of us are more, knuckleheaded than others, and it takes major events to show us that we need to do that. But I too have a good amount of support staff, as well as a physician assistant that I've brought on, and have been through hiring, nurse practitioner, PA. We have a PA currently, and so I know that I need the help because I want a quality of life that, for myself and for my family. And so I would say, my goal is for the business to run whether I'm there or not. I love seeing my patients, but I also love serving in so many other ways. I do medical missions, I speak, all these things. And so for me, it's not just about being in the office seeing patients, and I love that, but my own personal purpose is beyond that, so, yeah.
I think you're next, yeah. Did we lose did the person who was waiting there give up? Okay. Do you want to ask your question? Okay, your legs probably got tired, I'm sorry.
My question is I started my DPC in February of this year, and I've been going forward with marketing, and I hear a lot about marketing to companies. And other than sending out letters and walking into businesses, is there any other path anyone can suggest or any kind of resource? Somebody told me to look for TPAs. Well, the TPAs, it's not like you can just look them up on Google. So where are you finding those contacts?
Since she's new.
Yeah.
All right, I'll give this a go. My first year was miserable because I didn't want to do any self-promotion. And when I finally decided to ask patients if they felt comfortable and they liked their service, it kind of went to everybody because everybody was so happy, but to do Google reviews. And that is free and necessary. So between Google reviews, your SEO, and word of mouth like patient care, that's good. If you use Yelp, it's a waste of money. Print stuff doesn't work. Wait a minute, what's your question? You're nodding your head. Like it would. Okay. Oh, okay.
I'm asking a very specific question, and my specific question is, I want to now be able to market to small companies as having their employees enroll.
Okay, I didn't hear
and
that.
I understand how
right?
it would work if they did. What I can't get to is how do I break into that marketplace?
Right.
Who do I talk to? And how do I talk to them?
So here's my suggestion. Here's probably, everyone who's been open more than a year, please stand up. Come on, it's a good stretching opportunity. All right, so this is going to be vote by, so I have, if after a year you believe the way you're going to succeed is working with businesses, please stay standing up versus individuals.
I plan to do both.
Right.
I just wanted
but
as
my
another
point, My
part.
point is, look who's remaining. So you need to talk to these people. What I have found, and I think what many of us has found, is the businesses are really, really hard. They're put out there as the holy grail of DPC growth, and they're really, really, really hard. And most of the businesses for which our model resonates have incredible employee turnover. So if you do get in, and 3 years later you get in again, and you finally have a handshake agreement, and they have 30 employees, you get 3, and you then have to collect from the individual, because most businesses will pay for the subscription or the monthly fee, but not the rest. You have to collect from the business, and then you have to collect from the individual, and most of those companies have really high turnover. So there are people doing this well, and when I started, I was like, man, if I could just get like Atlas, a lawn and garden company with 30 people, that would be huge. But I think all of us are finding that's not how it works. But there's a few people standing for whom it worked. And I hear a lot of frustration in your voice, so I'm just going to acknowledge that. DPC is extremely collaborative, as you know, and as much as we talk about the businesses as being the holy grail, it's not been operational for most of us, I would say. Yeah, who are you pointing at? Good. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I can give you some tips on that for what we do in our community, and every community is different is another issue. Some communities have really good Facebook mom groups that are really good. There's I think Lori, who's a colleague of mine in South Carolina, some other people have gotten on to in North Carolina. Corey has gotten on with some moms business groups on Facebook and have taken off some of those small businesses. But in our community, we tell people to go to clubs, go to Rotary clubs, speak, get in front of people, tell them what you do. We use went to 1 million cups. I don't know if you've heard of that group. There are many countries, cities you can go and speak in front of 1 million cups, which is an entrepreneurship type group. Chamber of Commerce may be a good avenue for you, or may not, because
BNI.
some are good, some are bad, some are very expensive, so you can at least check into that.
And I'd also say, don't waste money on print advertising, radio commercials. I guess you could. I did a little bit of advertising on one of the local Christian radios. Again, they're very into the health sharing ministries, which dovetails very well. So, but again, you have to be strategic. I mean, if the local, top 40 station wants you to advertise, don't bother. So free advertising the best. Like if you can get on, if you can get free stories on the radio, TV, especially if you're new in town and it's a new thing, that's always helpful. And the best advertising is free advertising. Social media is a relatively cheap way to do it, on boosting Facebook and posts and tweets and so forth. Also, another potential way to connect with small businesses who may be more likely to get it. Nfib, the National Federation of Independent Businesses. Those are mostly small businesses that are working together for advocating for other small businesses, so that it's not expensive to join them, and they actually may be able to share you some resources, who the other members are in your area. So that might give you a target list if you want to go with the small businesses. And if you want to build your if you want to augment your practice with small businesses, don't go for the company that has 100 or 200 or 300 employees. I mean, if you land those, you might grow your business very quickly, sometimes too quickly. And the trouble is, what they give you, they can also take away. So, yeah, it sounds great to get 300 new patients, but if they decide to sell the business or they close, then you've lost half your practice. So, better to do it with maybe a dozen. Don't target companies that are more than 25 individuals. It'd be my advice, because you won't take too big a hit if they leave.
Right. So let's go. I know you've been standing a long time. Go ahead, sorry.
I just had a follow-up question. You mentioned about drinking the Kool-Aid. I drank the Kool-Aid 2 years ago and am in process of starting a DPC practice next year. You made a comment about ingredients, so I was just questioning maybe what you meant by those ingredients. What were the important ingredients?
That's a good question.
And maybe a second part question is, maybe someone might comment about naming your business and whether or not, what the pluses and minuses of using your name versus coming up with a unique name.
Sure.
So for the panelists, because it was a little quiet up here, he wants Dr. Heather to clarify what she meant about the ingredients in the Kool-Aid, and then some comments on how you chose your name.
I sunk myself. Okay. No, so Kool-Aid, when I reference that is, when I was looking into this movement very quickly, I actually was thinking about I'll do a $75 cash urgent care, because I was so disgusted what was going on in the urgent care business model. And that's how I stumbled on this. And so, I actually found Brian Forrest first, and then I heard Josh, and then I was watching all the videos. And part of the willingness of me being up here is that there's a lot of discussion about success, and nobody talks about you need to have, just like actually Julie has said multiple times in her feedback, that's probably a 3-year plan, just like any other business. And I think as physicians, we have this idea that I'm not a business, I'm a clinic. No, you're a business person first now. And if you're not, the fastest way to lose is to have a plan. I mean that very seriously. You need to be planning nonstop. So you need to be on a budget. Honestly, you need to be on a family budget. As doctors, none of us know how to do that. We shouldn't have to. We've earned everything. And when doctors call me and they're interested in doing this, the first thing I say is, how big are your golden handcuffs? Because if they're pretty big, you probably don't want to do this. If you're not willing to make lifestyle changes to make sure that you'll have success, if you don't have instant success and you're in it for the long haul, that's what needs to happen. So, Julie's got a great Google file, but honestly, step one, when I was talking to somebody yesterday, is literally step one, what do you want your business to be? Do you want to have a doing business as? Do you want your LLC to be your name? Pick that first. Get that filed. Don't waste money having anybody else do that. You can do it for like $75 online with your estate. Then you can go get your bank account, and then you can start doing everything else that you've been churning in your head about. I can't wait to go buy this card or make these flyers or go get my lease or all that. I mean, that's the very basic of where you start. When I picked my business name, I picked Columbus Medical Enterprises LLC. Why? Because if I did decide to sell it, it doesn't have my name on it. I have my doing business as name, but I have my LLC name, and the DBA can be changed. Also, I thought if something nasty happened legally, I don't really want my name on that. If something weird did happen, even though there's a lot of pride to it. So
can you clarify a DBA just real quick?
doing
in case
business
people
as
don't
name.
know?
So
Yeah.
like my business name is the Bartlett Medical Clinic and Wellness Center. That's not my LLC. So, and it's a separate mixture of filing thing that you need to do. None of this is rocket science. If you ask an attorney to do it, they'll say, oh, well, we'll do it for $500. There is no reason. The other thing about the Kool-Aid is as soon as you hang your shingle or you file that LLC, I don't know how they find this stuff, you will hemorrhage cash. If everybody who comes up and says they can help you, you sign on. You do not need that. And we have been force-fed that we're idiots and that we're so stupid, we're doctors, but we can't run a business. Have some faith in yourself. You absolutely can do this, but do the research.
So that within that comment, a question was how people pick their names. Do you want to just say your names again? So, and then if it's the name, we won't belabor that point. But
Well, I had an established practice, so we just kept it. It was a Champy family practice. My dad had started it, so because we had a reputation in the community, there was some draw to that and some continuity. So we kept it. Although if I had started a new practice, I probably would have come up with something, jazzy like most of the folks around here have. But it was we just had the name, so we just kept using it.
Our business name is very original. It's Direct Access MD. But I have to confess, I did not come up with it. My partner came up with that and already filed the LLC before I could do anything about it.
So I chose Family First Health Center as the name of my clinic, and I chose that actually when I was in medical school. And it's what's most important to me is my family. So in every situation, especially right now, my mom has cancer, so I'm flying back to Kentucky all the time and have to put my patients on notice that I'm going to be out. So the name has already kind of established the expectation, and because I knew also that I was going to be at some point having someone else join me, so it didn't make sense for it to have my name if I was going to have someone else joining me in the future.
Yeah, ours is Township Health DPC, and we just kind of brainstormed a little bit. We're in a little small town, and so it's kind of like a township, so it sounded nice. Came up with a logo. Not really much thought process in it.
Mine is Direct Family Care. I actually have a completely separate LLC for that business because I am doing a hybrid, so there are some things that, legally that needs to be considered there. But I'm a family physician. I didn't want my name on there because of the fact that I wanted to be able to grow a business, not, something that was hinged just on me. And it was close to direct primary care, and so I just wanted to put family in there, but no other reason.
So I'm Spark MD, and actually I brainstormed for about 16 hours with my husband. I wanted a concept of the first thing that arises from the fire, but Phoenix is overused, and you get Phoenix online, and then if you use FENIX, which is the original origin, it just looks weird. If you use the original origin of the word, it's called BENU, B-E-N-U, and BENU, family medicine, sounded like woo. So none of that worked. So we came up with like a list of 22 things, and what I would say is I didn't want to name it mine because I had a vision to grow, so I didn't want it to have Gunther, which was at the disappointment of my in-laws. But some of our original names the URLs were taken, or if I Googled it, you got into like some nasty places so Spark MD was what we came up with. Where I live, there's a lot of forest fires, and there's If you grow up there, they're actually a source of renewal. And I like the subtlety of, like I've said before, burning stuff down. But yeah, you want to make sure you can find the URL. The other thing, Paul Thomas did a great talk at the summit this summer, just with branding consistency. So Paul has just really done a fantastic job with social media. So one consideration, if you can get it, is when you come up with your name, you want to ideally be able to have the same URL, the same Instagram profile, and the same Facebook page. We have SparkMD, but then on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, I think we're SparkMD Clinic. There's actually a city called Spark, Maryland, so that screwed up getting the .com for a long time, but I eventually did get the .com. So anyway.
Search it if you're thinking about it.
Yeah, so if you go to GoDaddy and you type in your idea, you can see if the URL is available. And URLs are like $5 for a year. So if you have 13 name ideas and 10 of them are available, buy them all and sit on them so you have the URL until you make up your mind. Because it doesn't cost much, and then you buy yourself a little time. Okay, sorry, next question.
Hello, I'm Emma Lowine from Columbus, Ohio, and I've asked a few people this question, but I know there are people contemplating DPC here, so I'm going to ask the question again. So I started in March, and it's October now. I haven't grown very fast. It's been very slow, and I've been considering different options, and I know some people did fee-for-service plus their DPC. What would you recommend when you're growing really slow to try to get things moving faster?
Side jobs, but I'll let people expound on that.
Well, so yes, I have a few other side jobs, but I would say that for me, part of my efforts for not growing as quickly has to do with marketing efforts. And so for me, I'm going to be focusing on that, for the next several months. But certainly if you're talking from an income standpoint, or are you talking about growth?
Growth as far as patients.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so for marketing and really coming up with a good marketing plan. I don't know if you were in the talk before with Doug, and that was really, that was wonderful. And so, this year, this is our third DPC conference here with my husband. Our focus is marketing when we get back, putting the time and effort into that, and working, I have a CRM and things like that I'm using to do that, plus all the other stuff. But I think it was interesting to know that some of the things that, I did in the beginning to grow my fee-for-service practice it's not as effective for a DPC practice. So hopefully you were able to glean some great ideas from the conference.
So Heather, what are your thoughts on this?
Hi, Dr. Wyan. We know each other. I think I'm going to not directly address you just for a second, but you bring up something very important, and it's something that we'd actually talked on the phone before she decided to open her practice, which is, what is the reality of the landscape of where you're at? And Columbus is booming, it's huge. We have 3 giant health systems that spend exorbitant amount of money slitting each other's throat, that it's hard to kind of get your message out there. It's very easy to get drowned out. And so that's part of it. But it doesn't, as people are starting to get knowledge of this, and when people are close to you, I'm like, hey, she's over there, you don't have to drive all the way over here. I think that's part of the reality of it. And sometimes we're going to grow slower. And that's why I'm talking about that minimum 3-year plan. And if you nail it, fantastic. But sometimes it's just time. I have people that call and when they finally sign up, they're like, oh yeah, I've been thinking about this for like 6 months. Some people a year.
3 years.
Yeah, and I'm like, holy smokes. That would have been useful a while ago, but hey, I'm glad you're here. So keep heart, but it is slow, and I think it depends on where you're at. I've been really amazed meeting a lot of people around here that are like, I'm in a small community, and they light it up. And I'm like, I'm moving to your city. I'm coming. So there's this dichotomy, and maybe it's just me. And so you've seen one DPC practice, you've seen one DPC practice, but anybody else got any feedback for Dr. Wyan?
So I'm actually more of an introvert, and so this is a relationship-based enterprise. So it requires you getting out of the clinic and going out and forming those relationships. And sometimes in sharing your story, so when the person was talking about, start with why, I spoke at 1 Million Cups, and in the audience was the owner of a small business. I talked about my patient story, about me being a patient, and about wanting to become the type of doctor I wish I'd had. And I talked about a lot of other things, but that's the only thing they remembered. And they were looking for something like that for their employees. So now it wasn't just like, boom, we signed up, because it was a process. And the lady that asked the question about working with businesses, it's a trust stacking process. And I met with them, and then I met with their HR person, and I met with their executive team. It was this kind of a longer process, but really getting out there and forming the relationships, and identifying who you really want to work with, because sometimes we talk about marketing in mass, but it has to be the more specific it is, the better it is. So if you know that you want to work with small business owners, if you know that you want to work with women, if you know that you want to work with teens, that you want to make sure that your messaging is specific to them. And if you want to work with everybody, then you have to work with one at a time and not try to make this mass thing that works for everybody. But it does take time, and it takes building relationships. And so especially if you're an introvert, you have to kind of like drink your Kool-Aid and like get into your like situational extroversion is what I call it. And it's like I can turn it on, and then the next day, like turning my phone off, not talking to anybody. But it does require you to kind of get out there and form those relationships.
So we have about 15 more minutes. Oh yeah.
The other thing is, I think there's a certain level in the public that they are trying to make sure that we're real. And the longer you have your doors open, the more they start to come in. And it's a bizarre phenomenon. It sounds too good to be true. So I'll just wait and see if this thing actually is around, and if it's still around, then I'll participate. I don't know. That's what it kind of seems like.
Our lab vendor said, when you first met with us, we knew this was an awesome idea. We never thought you'd still be open. And will you see my mom? And this was like a year ago. And anyway, so it's super true.
And I was just going to say, another thing you can do, it might bear some fruit, is go to your local ER and urgent care clinic, because again, they want people to see primary care docs. They don't necessarily want people to come in to see them. And a lot of urgent care clinics don't want to do blood pressure refills. And it's kind of ironic, because there's a new doc in the box opened up in our town, and we love them because they'll give us, if we give a patient a prescription for a chest x-ray or pretty much any x-ray, it's $50 cash, and they don't get billed for a visit if they have an order from another physician. And so we started giving them a lot of business with the x-rays, and they started sending us a lot of patients who need PCPs. So again, and introduce yourself to the local ER, because they want people to have PCPs, and hopefully they won't send you all the drug seekers and and folks with like tons and tons of medical problems. Hopefully they'll send you some really people that are going to pay. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, and it's kind of funny, speaking about, Shane mentioned cherry picking, and I'll steal something that Keith Smith said, that we don't cherry pick our patients, they cherry pick us.
Yeah. Thanks for waiting. What's your question?
Thank you. So DPC is a very philanthropic mission, but at the end of the day, like Dr. Heather said, it is a business. And patients shouldn't have to choose between getting health insurance or paying their mortgage. And I've asked a bunch of physicians here who've been open, and I'm actually kind of a little bit sticker shocked at the low prices of the membership. And I would hate to think that there are some physicians that they are also choosing between that great patient care that makes them feel good, or paying their mortgage, or sending their kids to summer camps or things like that. So if you feel comfortable talking about any financial hardships you had in starting, but more importantly, I actually am in the process of finalizing my membership fees. And I hear that there's kind of like three basic ones, that there are tiers based on age groups. There are just 2 tiers maybe based on an individual versus family plan. And I've also heard some that are based on access. Like maybe if you pay the more premium price, you would get the doctor's cell phone number and after hours. But if you don't pay that, then you might be triaged by a mid-level provider. So how did you figure out where you were for your membership pricing, and like the different philosophies behind them, to help sustain your family, so you're not putting a hardship on your family and choosing patients over them?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question and very articulately put. Phil, are you still here? Where's Phil? Okay, so will you correct me if I'm wrong? So the paying, you used a particular word. the charging more for access is a dangerous, bad idea. Is that right? Right, so I got a thumbs up from Phil. So what I'm gonna, if it's okay, where did she go? If it's okay with you, can I change your question to, with where you are now, what pricing pearls do you have? So instead of talking about how people pick their pricing, basically, what have they learned or what would they do now? Because I think we've all had some pricing speed bumps. So who wants to take that? Yeah.
So the one thing that I would do differently is I would probably price my...
Sorry, can you say how you priced and what you would do?
Okay, so when we first started, I priced, there were basically 2 tiers, $60 for adults, $10 for kids, a family max of 120. So I have a lot of kids that I see that they're still on the family plan. I think that was too low. So about midway through my first year, as we were pretty much filling up, we changed it to $70 a month for adults and then a family max of $160. And I think that sits better. It didn't cause us any financial hardship, but it was, we end up like, we have a fairly big patient panel, but I probably 220 are kids and 85 plus seniors that we don't charge them, so.
Basically what we did when we set up our model was we did, because it kind of, and again, we figured it was something that people would understand, and again, this is not insurance, but we kind of so people that are used to insurance would understand it. We said originally we were $50 for an individual, $95 for a couple, and I think $140 for a family. And it was really interesting because I had no idea there were that many families out there with 6 to 8 kids. But they all found me and they all seemed to network. So I got so many, people with, again, it was amazing. Like, yeah, we've got 8 kids. Like, oh, great. Not many of them vaccinate, which is another whole topic. But, and we did also, if people wanted to pay advance, we gave them paid 11 months they get 12 months for the price of 11, so that gave us an infusion of capital, which was nice. We do veterans 10% discount off subscription rates. We felt like the VA wasn't taking care of a veteran, so we could do a small part to do that. And boy, people love that. And the problem was, I was doing my planning because I'm not a business person, so I figured, okay, if we're getting $50 per member per month, then we'll do very well. Trouble is, we were giving so many discounts that we weren't getting close to that on average. So we decided to, about 4 years in, we decided we had to go up on our rates, and it was really amazing. We went from $50 to $60, and kind of the equivalent for couples and families, and it was amazing. I mean, some people grumbled, most kind of kidding, and I think we lost 2 people. They were furious that we went up on their rates, and again, and actually both those people, we were really happy they left anyway. So yeah, it's important to do some reverse math. I mean, what do you think you're going to need to run your practice and make it decent living, and kind of go backwards from there? I mean, that's a good place to get a starting point, but you also want to try and think of all the eventualities. I mean, you never will think of all of them, but use that as a starting point, I think.
And this is actually one area that I got right, and because I made a lot of other mistakes, but is to ask your patients, your ideal patients. I went out and I said, hey, I'm going to be transitioning my practice. We're going to be offering same or next day appointments, longer one time with the doctor, convenient virtual visits so you can get healthcare while you're traveling. What would you expect that to be? And their number was higher than mine by a lot. So I went with theirs. So that was almost 4 years ago. And so back then, my pricing was high for DPC, and now it's average. because the market has changed, and I haven't needed to make substantial changes to my pricing. The only one that I did, I had a business coach that said if it ends with 9, for some reason people like that. I don't know the psychology, but it worked. We changed everything to ending in 9, and we've had more people sign up. I don't know why. But ask the patient. There's a reality of what you need, and there's a reality of what your community expects, and where those two meet is golden. Daytona Beach, Florida, it's not a high-income earning area. It's a very transient population. There's people that are always coming and going. It's surrounded by 2 bedrock communities where people come and stay. So I make sure that I have patients everywhere, so that I'm just not in the area where there's a lot of turnover, but the people that I'm called to serve, that's where they live. So that's where I wanted to be, but making sure that you're in line with an expectation, because if someone is going to buy like a Coach purse and you say it's $10, they're going to say it's not real. So there's a very real expectation of, like, if you're a really good doctor, there's going to be this expectation of what your price is, what the cost is to see you. And that needs to line up in someone's mind, or psychologically, they're kind of like, it must not be real, it must not be good.
Yeah, my comment on pricing, we've had to do a lot of different things. I started too low. I have a little pricing video or whatever, and people can email me if you want, but I took all my expenses and a whole bunch of assumptions about how much did I want to work, what patient, and got to where I thought $50 per adult per month would work. And I was the first practice in Southwest Idaho, so I had the fear that if I priced too high, no one would join, because people say, oh, this is a barrier to entry. So for the first year and a half, we didn't have a registration fee, and we had to bill in arrears. So what happened is people came in, they saw me. That first visit is the cornerstone of your future care, and I think for most of us, it's an incredible amount of work. It's an incredible lift. It's where you establish trust, try to figure out what's going on. So you're doing 1 to 3 to 6 hours of work. And the mistake I made is we'd set them up, and then their first charge was actually due. So if they established October 1, their first bill came November 1, and it was due December 1, because I billed at the end of the month. And I did not establish a culture of, when you are here, you pay for service. People will fight you to pay for 89 cents of Cipro, but they will not pay their membership because there's not a transactional thing. People say people pay for doing, not for talking. And what do we do in primary care? We talk. So my encouragement is establish right out of the gates that you pay monthly. The number of people who will claim they didn't understand that is staggering. And I think our contract says it like 42 different times and people sign it. But I'm a big advocate for a registration fee, because there are people there's not a huge proportion of people, but there are people who don't plan ahead. Life happens. They don't mean you any ill will, but they come, they use a lot of your space, time, and intellectual energy, and they get their needs met, and then they leave. And you've collected, $140, or if you don't charge a registration fee, $60 for 2 months' work and incredible medical liability and compassion, and that's not reasonable. So we put in a registration fee to have a tiny barrier. In our registration, we're now at $79 a month for adults, $10 a month for kids. Our kids are too cheap. I did it because I wanted more kids in my practice, and now I have 30% kids. So the comment that was made, if you're charging, we used to be at 65 and we opened at 60. My model, I thought, worked at 50. But I guess you have to look at your own market, and a $10 error is like if you are debating between 60 or 70, you got a $10 error for a 600 patient practice is $72,000 a year. So run the numbers, but like someone said, believe in yourself, because a $72,000 margin once you're full is a deal breaker, right? And if you're not open, you're not helping anyone. So I wouldn't beat yourself up over 29, 39, 49, 69, 89. We all kind of try to stay under 100, most of us, but there's communities where people are above 100 because the community supports it. So protect your business and protect your opportunity. The hill's a lot steeper if you start out lower, even if it's $5 difference. So that's my opinion on pricing. So we have a minute left. We'll take one more question, maybe? Okay.
Can I add a statement?
Oh, Heather's going to talk. Dr.
Just real quick. People don't value what they don't pay for. Even though you're giving them a tremendous value, they won't appreciate things, and it's very bizarre, and that was a really hard thing for me to learn. I hadn't heard Phil's talk like 27 times about don't give free labs, and I did that initially, and it made my first year, again, I made things very hard for myself, very difficult, because I had lab bills that were free, trying to engage people in their health, and thinking it would engage, like get them going. I had a low enrollment fee, and it was terrible. So she's absolutely right, and people value only what they pay for. I had a patient that said, if you can't sell a bottle of wine, you know what you do, doc? Raise the price. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. He's like, it works.
Yeah, last question.
All right, sorry for double dipping. It's Oliver again from Savannah. I just wanted to make a statement. When I heard this with the contracts earlier with the insurance companies, for all the people that want to opt out there, I would encourage you, be bold. Don't be rude or obnoxious or anything. Don't write long stories, but be bold. Because when we started to opt out, I found that her United contract was 180 days. I was like, gosh, no, that's just not, that was too far. So I wrote them a letter and opted out at 60, and they confirmed. So I'm just saying, just try. All they can do is say no, and they're very unorganized to a lot of things. But the minute you get a letter in the house that states, yeah, we got this and confirmed it, you're a winner. So I just want to, don't be too harsh with those insurance companies. They're also they just blow a lot of smoke oftentimes.
Yeah, thank you. So I think a theme is figure out what you want and learn how to ask for it, right? So thank you to these amazing panelists. I'm sure they'd all be willing to talk more. And thank you very much to Dr. Lee Gross and the Doctors for Patient Care Foundation for all of this. So
how about for Julie Gunther? And this amazing panel, thank you guys very much. I know we had a quick break scheduled, but quite frankly, it doesn't make sense to take a break to come back for 20 minutes. I'm just going to ask for us to run through the tape. We got 20 more minutes, so if you guys want to stand up, stretch your legs while I bring the last three-person panel, we're just going to cheerlead this out, leave on a high note. And so if you want to stand up, stretch your legs, we've been here for a little bit. If I could get Dr. Umber, Dr. Korba, and Dr. Newhoffel up here. Josh. Kim Korba, please come to the stage. All right, so one of the things that we wanted to talk about with this last brief panel here is as this movement continues to grow, it seems like there's a lot of distractions, a lot of people trying to make their way into this space. You'll be approached by lots of people. Everyone seems to have some interest in engaging with direct primary care. So what we wanted to do is just have a brief panel on keeping this positive, understanding the winning recipe, keeping your eye on the prize, and how to keep the movement pure. So appreciate you guys. You are welcome to take the ambient conversations outside. I appreciate it, and let's just go ahead and again we'll kind of run it through the tape. So either please have a seat. You are welcome to continue to talk. Please just take your conversations outside, and we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you.
Where do we go from here?
Say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah.
I pledge allegiance.
Please bow your heads. Yeah. Well, I think what our job here in the next 20 minutes is to talk about the future of DPC, right? So Josh, I, and Kim have been doing this a while. Josh since 2010. Yep. Me since 2011. You since
2016.
2016. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're old. They're younger, but have been doing it longer.
Yeah, and so I think what a a lot of us here today are obviously focused on our own practices and growing our own businesses, which is the most important thing, because if each individual practice doesn't succeed, the movement doesn't succeed. But I think there's these overarching ideas, and some of them are different visions of where we should go from here, and so I think that's what we're kind of here to do. I think the easiest way to do that is kind of keep the discussion at a high level, and you guys have gotten tons of information today about logistics of how to grow your own practice, how to pricing, how to name, but when you get into some of these larger issues, and there's been some of this discussion today, I think from a broader perspective is, where does DPC want to be in a year or 5 years or 10 years? And I can say, doing this for a while now, and I think it's an Abraham Lincoln quote, but I'm going to get it wrong because every time I quote people, I get it wrong. I should Google these things before I say I'm going to do quotes on you. But most people overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in 10. And I think that's absolutely true from my experience at DPC. Is I started in 2011. I think Josh and I were talking about this 2009, 2008?
If not 8, yeah, because med student residency.
Med student and residence. And so, Josh and I think both said we were going to have the entire world. And Josh, you're close to it. I'm not close to conquering the world.
2012, maybe 2013, early.
This would be like 90% of primary care.
Yeah. Such a good idea.
Yeah, you can't argue with good ideas.
Yeah.
And so I think that's been my experience, is that, although my own practice grew steadily, I thought the DPC movement would be further along, because once a few of us proved it, everyone would just say, well, let's just do this.
So you think it would be farther along by now?
Yeah. But then you look up and it's 1,000 doctors and
I'm saying in the early days I was frustrated.
I'm loving to hear what you guys thought when I was my kids were 4 and 8 and I was 5 years into private practice, and you guys were neophytes in residency talking about this.
I don't know what that means, but I'm insulted.
But I'd love to know what you guys were thinking in the residence lounge, on call at night, talking about this thing. Where did you think it would be in 2018?
It was great because it was all pie in the sky. When it's just the idea, it's just the best part. So you haven't got into the frustration of taxes and accountants and the moving pieces, the parts that you don't necessarily love. So we could blue sky and say, okay, what's the best we can do for patients? And what else is a problem? And we were just in the hospital, and boy, it'd be great if diabetic supplies were cheaper or something. And now, 8 years later, you look up, and there's an entire industry trying to revolve around direct care. I mean, it's created its own gravity because it's so valuable. So it's the days go by slow, but the months and years go by really quickly. And I think that's the unique challenge, is as this grows, it will have to change. It's a group of innovative people who can't stay the same. We have to innovate the model forward, but we still have to have a lot of respect for where it's been and what's made it successful. I think a good example is New Coke. And Coke is wildly successful, and then they're like, yeah, but now we think we have a better version of Coke, and everybody hated it. And so we have to be careful. I think success going in to time is a bit of a it's a railroad track, and you watch it, it's balance beam, and it gets smaller and smaller. So it feels like we have less room to innovate because we have to stick to our core principles. We have to look backwards and look forward.
And you guys coming from how long ago, a decade ago, and what your ideas and how few there were, and me transitioning 3 years ago, it seems like a lifetime already, just the past 3 years, really, it does. And knowing what it used to be like before all the regulations started, I was blessed enough to have been able to practice for a couple of years like that after residency, before it got really tough. I think one thing, what Josh is trying to say, and I'm sure Ryan will agree, as this movement does go on, there's going to be a lot of noise and things going on around us. I think the purity, which is in the program as part of the title of this, is important. And I was making notes back there. Out of pure, to me, comes patient, physician, and practice. Those 3 words. We've got to keep all 3 pure. The patient's number 1, we're doing this for them. Number 2, we're doing it for ourselves so we can continue to do it for the patients. And the practice itself, the model of DPC. There's going to be there's already been some pressure and outside noise about the model as we grow and gain more recognition, and I think it's good to remind ourselves about those 3 things.
Yeah. Well, the second half of bring it back to Abraham Lincoln, so I said I was discouraged, but the second part of that quote is, we are underestimating what we can do in 10 years, and whether that's from your timetable or mine. Or
I'll be retired by then.
Yeah, I'm not saying 10 years from now, but okay. There's things that have happened in the last year or two that may on the surface seem pretty small that I never would have dreamed were possible a year or two, or certainly 6 or 8 or 10 years ago. Certain conversations with people that you would never think you had access to. So although our raw numbers still aren't huge, I can guarantee you there are very, very important people who are paying attention to what we're doing. Yep. And so I think we are now reaching a stage of we have a credible movement, and we want more doctors to do this. But as Kim was speaking to, I think we do have to be careful about sticking to those principles that made us attractive to doctors. And if we start straying from that because we want to scale, which I'm still not quite sure what that word means. I know what people think it means, but I think there's some danger there in trying to grow and compromising those principles. And there's a great George Bernard Shaw, which is a super smart guy apparently, because I'm quoting him. He said the reason, I think Josh uses this all the time, but I'm going to steal you.
Please.
Well, yeah. I can't steal your quote because you didn't say the quote.
I stole his quote later, but yeah.
Yeah. So the reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. And I guarantee you, Josh has been called unreasonable so many times.
By friends, by family, by enemies, by
and so I think there's some truth to that. That there are certain things that we need to adapt to, or we need to find areas of compromise. But at the same time, it's hard to adapt or plug ourselves into an unreasonable system. And so that's where I get a little bit uncomfortable when we say, well, yeah, what you guys have done is good so far for your little practice, but if we want to scale this big, you need to change the way that your business works, your practice works, so that it fits with the existing structure. And I think what we should be more inclined to do is to persist in our ideals and make that system adapt to us, which again seems crazy, but so there's going to be areas of gray and there's going to be areas of disagreement, but I think that we have more power than we probably think.
Disproportionate amount of power, even though we are a percentage or two of the overall family medicine volume. The other 70% of burnt out doctors don't make any noise. They're depressed, in terms of activity. And so we're like Ryan is saying, we've got HHS is sending powerful and important people to come to talk to 300 plus doctors because they're listening, and the White House is listening, and love it or hate it, Sean Hannity is we couldn't buy $10 million worth of a 15-minute ad on there. What made that so valuable was that it was pure, is that we are sticking to the things that matter, is we are putting patients first in a way that few other industries have, and that focus will be, I think, the lighthouse that will guide us from where we started to where we're at to where we will be. And if we alter from that too far, it's not going to work, and we're just going to see it start to crumble at the edges. But
and I can say you guys are valuable. What you do is valuable every single day. I agree with the discussion about the pricing, and don't forget that as we stick to these core values that Josh and Ryan are talking about. I've watched the system devalue primary care. I've been there myself. And what we do is valuable. So don't forget that as we march forward, and we don't know what's coming. But if we stick to our guns and realize that we are valuable, and people are realizing that, I think we're going to do fine.
I think something that gets often lost in these conferences, which are 90% physicians, is that this is a movement and a model that empowers physicians, but that's really not why DPC is possible. I think it's the space in which we can reclaim that autonomy, and that space we can reclaim our power and tell all the powers that be to screw off, and that's all true, and that's all great, and I'm as much rah-rah physician as possible, but DPC at its core is about patients, and if the patient is not the one in control, preferably even financially, then any intermediary that gets in between us, there's a chance of things getting warped. So as much as we talk about, this is a physician movement, I think as much as anything, it's a patient movement. And if we lose track of that, that's where I think things get really ugly. You want to open up for questions? We got 10 minutes.
Yeah, if people start going up to the mic, I think we can, otherwise we can talk forever. Yeah, it's that empowerment. It's the fact that, Dr. Nick sitting over on the wall, with that amazing beard, gets overshadowed by Vance. He's helping my brother
well, that's
a few
he's
chairs down.
7'3", but
with, in my brother in one town a few hours away, they're looking at pregnancy and OB fees, and it's $23,000 is quoted by the hospital, and they won't negotiate. And Dr. Nick can do it for less than $5,000 because he has negotiated with the hospital. So, it's that we're connecting people all over, and that's the difference. We see this broken system with this dichotomy between affordable and unaffordable care. That's what's driving us. And each time we go out and fix it, there's a Dr. Nick fixing it for a Keene or a Kirk everywhere in every city. And yes, we want to be valuable or valued, but we become valued by being valuable. You take off a 5mm excision behind an ear and do an ear lift in the process to save a patient $8,000.
It looks beautiful, by the way. It's beautiful.
In Mohs surgery. So, if we keep doing that, if we keep pushing ourselves, which is uncomfortable, because in the current system, you refer, and that's easy because it's a low malpractice thing, and now the specialist is taking care of that, and I didn't have the time to do it in the broken system anyway, so I don't, and that ends up not being the mentality that will make you successful in direct care. So we have to get comfortable at being uncomfortable in a lot of ways. We have to put that patient first, and do the procedure and find out, okay, I can manage this test with, the help of the DPC community or a specialist in my town, but just be more, do more patient-centric stuff. We can't go wrong if we do that. I think the moment we start playing to different masters, insurance companies and employers and data collectors and things, we start to lose the glow that makes this so uniquely powerful.
Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, Dr. Paul Thomas. This one on? Yeah, Dr. Paul Thomas, Plum Health, Detroit, Michigan. I think
we all know who you are, Paul.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you're a rock star.
We all follow you on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah, Instagram.
I'll eventually get an
LinkedIn, too.
Instagram page,
Yeah,
Paul.
get the
I'm
Instagram
sorry.
page, man. Come on. Make sure it's the same name as your clinic name, okay?
He's blushing.
Good.
All right. So I think we can all agree that we've seen linear growth in the DPC movement. I think in 2010, maybe 50, 100 practices. And I know that, when I started in 2016, maybe 400, 500 now, close to 1,000 docs or practices across the country. What do you think will push the DPC movement to exponential growth, or do you think that will ever happen? Do you think we'll continue to see this linear growth, or is there something in the ecosystem that might change that, might make for exponential growth?
I think specifically we talk, just to define terms, often we say scale, like Silicon Valley talks about scale, one server, an exponential number of new users, and that isn't what this is. At best, this can only ever grow really in a truly linear fashion, one doctor and a chunk of patients, because we can't be each adding on 100 more patients each month to the same set of doctors. But can it grow quicker over time? I think absolutely. This is proof of it. You're proof of it. You're saying I would rather spend this money and my time, go away to learn a better model than stay in the current broken system. Every successful doctor that does this, it's, maybe cliche medical analogy, it's viral, it's contagious, it spreads that. And
I have the numbers from Lee over the past 3 years.
Okay, fantastic.
So 3 years ago, which was the first nuts and bolts, and it was the first time I met all of these early innovators, pioneers. Blessed to know them all. There was 250 attendees in Dallas, 41 states represented. Last year here at the Rosen, there was 279 attendees, 39 states represented. Today, this conference, 380, and 40 plus states represented, and one foreign country, Bermuda, is here, and they have DPC.
Yay, Bermuda! Well, and that's in context of now there's multiple DPC events. So, even though each conference may not be growing by tenfold, now there's, multiple conferences.
Yes.
So that's even impressive.
Considering
growth.
there might be a slight dilution factor.
Yeah,
because
no,
there's
for
more
sure,
than one
a
conference.
dilution
So,
factor, yeah.
that's to support what Josh was saying as far as the growth and maybe to help.
I get a little bit perturbed at the word scale, and again, because I think it's just a misapplication of the word. What I look at is replicating stuff that is proven to work, and that may not be like an exact carbon copy in one town to another because there's local geography. But instead of looking to like grow one DPC practice to take care of all of America, I can do a pretty good job on my 600 patients, but I can't take care of America, and nor do I think any single DPC entity is going to be able to scale like McDonald's, because it's such a service and relationship-based business that I just don't see that happening. But again, when Josh and I started, there was literally a handful or a dozen or less in the country. So now see there's over 1,000 is just amazing to us. But I wish there was 10,000 of us, but I think we'll get there.
I wrote an article for Lehigh Valley Business almost 2 years ago, and I called Phil to get the numbers back when he started the Mapper. Phil, are you still here? Do you remember that phone call?
Yep.
Okay. It was 2014 you started the Mapper? It was 100 and something practices. And then we calculated the growth rate was 680% when I wrote the article 2 years ago, and I think you were up to like high 700s at that point. So the growth has been
Steady.
incredible. Yeah,
Yep, steady.
Incredible.
And I think scale is something that business people are trying to use to push this into a cookie cutter type of growth. Like, you've got to get vested and you've got to get $10 million and we have to churn this out and you've got a runway and we've got to get liftoff velocity for this breakaway unicorn. No, this is bread and butter family medicine, There's a book I read to my kids, Vance, and no, Vance has got a great story, I won't steal it. But, so a different book, if you give a moose a muffin or a pig a pancake and these great little books we get, if we just do one thing, we'll get to the next thing, right? And then the next. And if we just build on that success at the rate that it comes to us. We can't force patients to come to us quicker. We can't try to make 200 patients join every month. We can't force it into scale and 10x and all these things. It's a grassroots, organic movement, and it'll happen at the exact right way it's supposed to happen. And that's it. We just keep doing what has made us successful, and we'll go from here to the next point.
Great. Question?
Hi, I'm Greg Skoshko from Philadelphia. I'm about to launch. First of all, thank you for everything, everybody that's been involved in organizing. Two related questions. The first one has to do with sort of state level differences. We look at sort of policy and legislation and sort of, what they call the laboratory of America, or state level laboratory, and there's some states that are DPC friendlier and, it's thriving in a much more, exponential way, and then there are other states that we continue to kind of plod along. And how do you see that evolving or being leveraged over 3, 5, 10 years? Obviously, there's a lot of litigation and lobbying that may be coming, and that's one thing I think we haven't seen is the really big actors, the Blue Crosses and Anthems and who knows who else could
Capital, United.
Come at us.
He's talking about our state.
Yeah, and so they may come at us, and we need to just sort of be ready to continue to fight the fight. I think the purity and the value is, you've already alluded to that, but these other ways to derail us, is there anything we should be thinking moving forward, locally and nationally?
Well, I think the first question, there's some states that have dumb or bad laws that can hamstring some aspects of a practice, but Josh and I were practicing in Kansas, which I know has a lot per capita, but before there was a DPC law, before there was anyone defining any of this. So I think sometimes we get tripped up, like there's going to be like a magic, thing that happens in whatever state that's going to fix all this, but that's rarely the case. I mean, there's some states that don't allow dispensing of medicine, and that really sucks because it's much more complicated to add value if you can't do that. But so yeah, some markets I think are more difficult, and it may be because of a regulatory issue, or it may be because there's a high penetrance of HMOs, and that becomes more difficult. But I hate saying like, well, there's just a state that won't work in. You just have to look at the value proposition for your practice and what's possible.
And I know you're referring to Pennsylvania. Yes, and we've met some pushback and have had some little backhanded things try to happen to us. I think we need to band together as an organization within the state. And we have some legislators on our side, but the most important thing is the patients. I find myself sometimes getting lost in all of this, and I have to reel myself back in. And my focus, I was just emailing a patient through a secure connection, don't worry, about a pediatric pulmonary issue on a Saturday back there because I didn't want it to wait until later this afternoon. That's what's going to protect us, is the patient care. And I know what Philadelphia and the suburbs and eastern Pennsylvania with the penetration of the insurance companies, I don't know how bad it is in some other deeply penetrated regions. It is scary what they can do and what they've done to practices in our region. They really are gorillas out there. And so we still have a little bit of that PTSD from that. So don't worry, we're going to take it one step at a time.
But then also, I think there's a certain amount of power that we have there. We just play a different game, right? You don't change the system from the inside, you create a whole new system. And Pandora's box of affordable care has been opened, and it will never close again. This idea, again, at the very high risk of being redundant, patients first. I think Texas will reverse the dispensing rules. Yeah. Why? Because of every politician loves consumer protection type legislation, and every politician can be successful running on this platform of medications for a penny a pill. And we've innovated so much value that's bipartisan. They're just going to move in the direction of better, more affordable care.
But there's some states where they don't. They're so deep in the pockets that they don't.
But then pharmacists will join. And I've got the business model for any pharmacist that wants it for how to work with DPC. But then Harkin Health was United Health's DPC attempt, and after $180 million, they closed shop. We're the secret sauce to this. There's a reason we don't see large national franchises in healthcare, is because it is so local and it is so provider or physician specific into what you bring to your patients. It's artesian. Neil has a practice in his house on the second level, and it looks awesome. Yeah. And the playground is a tax write-off, which is unbelievable. And
his wife's antique furniture, his grandmother's antique furniture. I did watch the video.
People want that. They don't want the McDonald's of direct care, and no one is able to provide that because doctors don't want to work for that. So insurance companies haven't been able to run clinics. We're able to run clinics, and I think that's the saving grace, the kind of ace in the hole.
A couple more questions, and I think we're done.
I'm Jess Paxson. I'm a third-year resident currently. I don't know how many other residents are here.
Third-year resident?
Resident, yeah.
Resident.
Yeah. So I plan on joining DPC straight out of residency and kind of avoiding the system in general. But I feel like a lot of my peers and medical students are very nervous, more nervous to jump into DPC than they are the traditional practice. So what would your biggest piece of advice to other residents or medical students who have that concern?
I have 4 third-year medical students with me for a 4th year in a row. The first group lived through the transition with me. And they've called and they've checked on the practice and they're following me on social media. If you're going to jump into DPC and it doesn't work, you can jump out. There's nothing to be afraid of. You either pick, you either do this model or this model, whichever one fits you better. There's always an option. Yep. So once you're in, you're not indoctrinated for life.
Well, I've gotten to speak at the AFP National Conference of Students and Residents. I think most years out of the last 4 or 5, and I can tell you that students and residents are more energized and excited about DPC than old guys like me and Josh. And so, I think there's a lot of energy and excitement there. I think if you look at the attendance of the DPC meetings at those things, they're always the most well attended. The member interest group is the most attended. But there is that fear, and students are coming out with huge burdens of debt. And so I've talked to a lot of residents who say, I want to do that eventually, but I want to go, I'll sell my soul for, $280,000 a year for a couple of years to pay that off. And so, I think a lot of those are financial decisions. But I think in terms of just the concept, I think residents and students, the sooner we get to them, the better they understand it, and eventually they'll be the ones who fix it, not Josh.
What would be great is if our practices grew and we could hire them.
Yeah.
Rather than the startup. And I don't know if we're quite there yet. It's starting to happen. I'm hearing stories. But my alma mater is Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. Their bioethics professor called me. I'm going down there in December to speak to the first and second year students. He's going to probably invite the family practice residents as well. And he sent me the curriculum, and I looked it over. I said, nothing on here really applies to DPC. And he said, well, I have to send you that just so you have it from the AOA, but I want you to come and speak about DPC. These kids need to know what they're getting into and that they have a choice. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, I would encourage everyone to call your alma mater, and if you're in DPC and you feel comfortable, call your alma mater and say, the students are really excited about this, and I would love any opportunity, whether it's informal or an actual lecture, because most medical schools, if you have someone who's graduated from there, they're more likely to let you do something like that.
Where are the students with Benjamin Rush? There we go. Fancy tie back there. Granddad was a radiologist in Russia. I heard that story. Benjamin Rush is doing an excellent job getting in front of medical students and residents and any opportunity you have to speak for them as a direct care practice. Again, I do think they are responding incredibly well and thriving to this. They're cautious because they're med students and they don't know what the future will hold, and they're worried about debt. But the faster this moves, the more students get interested. They love the tech, they love the simplicity. But it's funny, I think there's that little fish, big fish kind of mentality we have. I hired my third friend, Dr. Jared Johnson, after being burnt out. And he's like, could you start a practice? Like, yeah, we could, but we need a new location. And so he's like, all right, I'm going to hand in my letter of resignation. Wait, let me see if I can find a location. So, all right. And then he comes to me, we find a place, and I've written the letter. It's like, okay, well, don't hand it in. And we're working on some paperwork, and there's some delays. He's like, now I'm just carrying it in my pocket. I'm just sort of waiting to hand it in. And a week or so before we actually end up signing on a place, he's like, screw it, I'm going to put it in. All he had to do was get past the 3-month window for when his wife was going to deliver, and he just needed his 90-day thing there. That's how bad he just wanted out. And the whole pajama EMR thing, the date night thing with the EMR, and he would rather not practice medicine if we couldn't open the second practice for him, or do it with us. And within a month of joining, his wife sent us a letter that was just very heartwarming and gave me the opportunity to have a switch in the mentality. She said, we finally have my husband back.
Oh.
Yeah, very touching. Kids were happier, he was happier, the family's happier after just 1 month. And he's probably not making anything that first month with us. Because it's just keep what you kill. It wasn't even about salary. But we said, okay, let's take our rightful spot up here and be proud of what we have. If you want to compare us to the current system, great, let's do that. What's the call schedule like in that other world? Yeah? How much paperwork you're doing in that other world? How happy are you with those patients? If you want to put DPC under a microscope, please. But put the typical insurance-based model under the same microscope, and it's a win every time. There's no comparison. So I think that's what med students see when they rotate through with us, is they don't have a dog in this fight, they just want a good model. They're not committed to the insurance model, they have no preference to it other than it's the status of the momentum, the status quo.
So one thing before I want to let somebody else comment, but if you don't have a Benjamin Rush chapter at your medical school, if any of you guys are medical students here or residents, that is going to be a large part of medical students learning that there are options and that there's changes going on and staying informed. I mean, we all remember what that was like. We were in our heads were in our books for the first 2 years. and then busy with rotations third and fourth year, you tend not to know what's going on in the world around you. So the younger generation behind, two behind me, maybe one behind them, are really going to be also the ones to make the change. So we have to keep them informed, and the best way to do that is through organizations like Benjamin Rush. So I encourage you to make sure you try and get one established at your medical school.
We maybe got time for one or two, depending on how long-winded we are. Which is going to be long.
one more question.
So half a question, only half.
I'm Robin Kendig. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. I open in February. Can you hear me?
There we go.
It's more of a plea and maybe a question for the whole movement, but don't forget about the employed docs. I think when you talk about linear growth versus exponential growth, what I've seen in my market of monsters is that they're not renewing contracts of physicians by the dozens, both surgeons and primary care. So I was actually excited to see the surgical talk yesterday. I'm going to talk to some people at home about that who've been laid off, who are fantastic general surgeons. So a lot of my colleagues that have been laid off have just stopped working. I've spoken with a few of them, but there's so little knowledge of DPC that it was hard to kind of approach them. So some of them don't work. Some of them are now employed by Anthem. And some of them are just flailing and doing holistic or acupuncture or something on the side.
Life coaching?
Life coaching, but they're in no position to do that. So perhaps if you guys can put your...
It's a lot of education for life coaching.
If you guys can put your heads together as our leaders and even put the employed physicians kind of at the top, because I even formed a union at my employer prior to deciding to leave, trying to help my colleagues.
Yeah.
That didn't work out.
Yeah, imagine not.
No, I'm really popular with my corporation. So anyway, I just wanted to plug that because I think there's a lot of fantastic physicians in their late 40s, early 50s.
You can start a group employed.
Who would be great.
So I think sometimes, maybe this is lost, and probably for obvious reasons, but I think whenever we criticize the system or doctors who are brainwashed or trapped in the system, most of those are our friends. Like they're not bad doctors. They're probably better than I am.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah. And so, I think sometimes it does come across as like an attack on doctors trapped in the system, but I think as much as anything, we have sympathy and empathy. Now, we get frustrated because we're like, wake the hell up, and see the truth.
Are they feeling like we're attacking them?
And so, I think sometimes that does, when we attack
I want to know. I can't hear you.
I don't think that they feel attacked. I feel like they don't know.
They have an opportunity.
It's in ignorance. Now,
Well, I think in some, there's survey data on this, and among primary care physicians, from family med organizations and others, there's not a lack of awareness about DPC in terms of just a concept and model. Now, among some specialists, absolutely, they've never even heard of this idea. But I think there's different ways we can reach those people, and I think that's the idea, is to reach every doctor, and the vast majority of doctors in America are now employed. So of course we want to reach them.
Any ideas on how to do that? Let us.
I don't know. I struggle. I have 4 female partners who are amazing, who I love. I call them partners, even though we're not really partners. We're employed doctors that share a space. But I have tried to inspire them to come with me because they are burned out, and our patients are actually suffering from new employment regulation. So they all want out, but they don't want to run a business. And I keep pointing out to them that you're spending more time doing what you're doing now than you would in DPC, and you'd have autonomy back.
Right.
And you'd have we are not taking good care of patients in 10 minutes. I see 30 roughly a day, and that's mandated by my employer, and I have to refer within my system or I get a fine.
Yeah, we hear
Talk
that.
to us later.
I need to talk to you afterwards, seriously, about something else.
So
all right, I think Lee's going to kick us off. Just shut off the mics, Lee. Just shut off the mics. Just
one
shut them
more,
off.
one more reference.
Caffeinated Josh.
Alcohol is what makes me sleepy. You jazzed me up. But in the 1400s, there was one There was one library in the entire world, you know, and it wasn't until the Gutenberg press and the Gutenberg revolution made it so that Bibles using standard pieces and building machines made books accessible to everybody. If there's 380 doctors here and we each go and talk to 10 of our colleagues, we'll blanket all of primary care. You know, this is that revolution. This is learning and taking it back and figuring it out and spreading the good word to help doctors and patients. So every burnt out doctor can reach to any other DPC doctor and they'll tell them how to do this. And yeah.
I think that's a perfect place to end this panel of leaders up here. So if we can give them a thank you for their hard work year round. So I just want to do a couple things as we wrap up this this conference here. First of all, I just want to say that this meeting would not be possible without the generous support from the Physicians Foundation. So for starters, I'd like to give a round of applause for the Physicians Foundation. And what we're going to ask these nice folks from the Physicians Foundation to do is go back to their board and ask for assistance to make this even bigger and better next year. I mentioned we want 600 people at next year's conference. I want 600 people at next year's conference. So for them to do that, what I'd like to do is record a loud thank you for them. So if we get those cameras with a nice wide view of the crowd, and I'm going to give you a count of three. On the count of three, I want you all to say as loud as you can, "Thank you, Physicians Foundation." Okay, so we're going to do this on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Also want to give a big thank you to the sponsors, again, that make this event possible. A huge thank you to the Rosen Resorts. As you saw yesterday, there's a reason we're here. They are huge supporters of this initiative, and so we appreciate their support they've given us in the past and their continued support going forward. I want to thank our speakers. Our speakers these last couple days have been absolutely outstanding. So we appreciate them taking times away from their family and from their practices to be with us. You know, this is their business and their livelihoods, and they've made it an effort to come out and teach others. As you know, this is a movement where we keep driving each other forward. Felicia, Horton, Bob Jacobus, I know they like to stay behind the scenes, but we'll go ahead and give a big wave to Felicia back there in the corner. She has killed herself to put this conference together, so thank you, Felicia. Thank you, Bob. And their entire team that has made this possible. We have an army of volunteers back there that really make this possible, so we thank them all. The board of the Docs for Patient Care Foundation, again, many of the members who are here today who work as volunteers year-round to make this possible. I just want to put in a note that Docs for Patient Care Foundation does work year-round. We are not a one-time, 1 week out of the year organization. Our work starts after this conference ends. It doesn't end here. So just like your practice needs financing year-round, our organization needs financing year-round to continue to do work on your behalf. So I would encourage you to please donate generously to the Docs for Patient Care Foundation. Those of you that did get a scholarship ticket and put the refundable deposit down, that deposit is able to be donated to the Docs for Patient Care Foundation. It is tax-free, so there's a form that's on your table that you can request your refund if you have a scholarship ticket, and you can request your refund, or you can request that refund be donated to us. Just go ahead and check that box. We'd love for you to do that. Drop it off at the registration desk. There is a CME form for both days. Make sure you got one for both days. If you do not fill this out and sign it and turn it into the registration, you will not get CME. Please don't email me in 2 months saying, my license renewal is in 2 days and I need CME certification. I get them every year, but please fill out the forms. I'm not going to be able to help you after the fact if you did not fill out these CME forms. Last, these lanyards are recyclable. Please leave them here on your desks. So again, thank you to all of you. This would not be possible without the wonderful support of all you people coming out here, and make sure that we continue to push this movement forward. Use some of the energy you got here and light some fires in some people when you go back home, and I wish you all safe travels back home. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great weekend. Thank you.